We met the gaggle in a warehouse full of rolls of paper. The aliens gasped when they realized the scale of the place. The rolls were stacked on pallets, each roll about 2 meters wide and 2 meters in diameter. The warehouse was over 100,000 square meters, and it was full. Emma and I were in our king and queen outfits to give the official tour. "Welcome to Earth," Emma said, "and specifically to the Punjabi Printworks, where we are printing the galactic edition of the Promethean Fold Drive Construction Guide." There were about 20 aliens in the group, most of them journalists. "This is a lot of paper," one of them said. "Actually, this warehouse only holds enough paper to print about one of the 20 volumes in our full print run. We are continually resupplying from the human colony of Sao Paulo, and it will take about 40 trips with one of our largest fold ships to supply the entire print run." We motioned to follow and led them through double doors to the printworks. It was a loud environment, so I motioned for everyone to put on the headphones we had provided, customized in advance for those whose heads might not be quite human in geometry. "Can everyone hear and understand me?" Emma asked. Being curators, we didn't actually need the prop microphones we were wearing, but we didn't want to show off too much. Everyone made the gesture equivalent of nodding for their species, and Emma pointed out one of the presses, which was being loaded with one roll of paper while another spun out. "This is one printing press. It is printing an 8-page section of the manual. This one here, in fact. A check copy was posted on the side of the press. It will use up one of those rolls of paper every 6 minutes. So that it does not sit idle, the lift truck operator replaces one roll and threads it while the other is being consumed. The machine switches over on its own when the live roll is exhausted." While we watched, the forklift operator threaded the roll he had just delivered, and sure enough, when the live roll spun out, that one started spinning up. The forklift operator took the empty core with him as he drove off. "This facility has 20 of these presses. They are complicated machines that need a lot of maintenance, so we generally have 15 going at any given time. We have 8 lift truck drivers to keep them supplied with paper, and an automated ink supply fed from tanks on the roof. These are rotary presses, which roll across the paper to deposit ink from etched type blocks, which have to be curved to the radius of the print drum." We walked on under ribbons of paper flying overhead, moving much faster than the eye could follow. "Above us, the ink that was just printed is drying before the pages are folded," Emma said. A little later, the ribbon of paper saw swallowed by another machine, which spat out a neat succession of folded and bound pamphlets, which were automatically stacked onto a pallet. "Here the paper has been folded into sections we call signatures, which will be stored until we have enough of them to print a complete volume." We passed into an even larger warehouse where pallets of signatures were staged as far in both directions as the eye could see. "This warehouse is 10 times the size of the paper roll warehouse, nearly 1 million square meters," Emma said. "In order to get to the bindery, we've called an electric bus because it's nearly 4 kilometers from here." "Any questions?" Emma asked as the silent bus pulled out. "I thought I understood the scale of human constructions," one of them said. "To make something as novel as your fold drive obviously takes works on a scale we had never seen. But one of the first things we learn in curation is to make books, and that you are doing this to make something so familiar. Books is astounding. Do your people ever print on this scale for other reasons?" Another asked. "Actually, we do all the time," Emma said. "The population of the Earth is about 800 million, so it's not unusual for 1 million or more of us to want a copy of something popular. Many of us favor books over computer displays. They don't need power, they don't break down, and you can make marginal notes in them." "You write in your books?" "Oh yes, we do have libraries where books are shared, but most of us own books too. It's why we invented printing on this scale." We reached the bindery where the signatures were being staged for assembly into complete copies of Volume 3. This machine gathers the signatures, aligns them, and prepares them for the binder. Normally, this step would also involve gluing the pages together, but your guides need to be separable so you can take sections to different parts of a fold shop. So here they are, pressed together and trimmed. This machine was enclosed but made impressive chopping noises. What emerged were neat stacks of paper that had been trimmed of their folded edges and punched for loose binding. These passed a short distance into another machine where they emerged with covers and screw-stud binders holding them together. And here is the finished product. We have only one binding line specialized for this run, and as you can see, it produces about 1 book per second. So we could theoretically finish the run for each of the 20 volumes in about 12 days. But in practice, these machines can't run continuously. They need maintenance and adjustment, so it will take about 20 days per volume. We expect the whole project to take about 1.5 years, and then we will start working on distributing them to every indexed world in the galaxy. We finished up in a little auditorium where we took questions and observations. When you told us you were going to print a copy for every world in the galaxy, we thought it would be the work of generations, one of them said, and others made gestures of agreement. The idea that you can do something like this in a year or two, that is going to be difficult to convey to our audience. None of us have ever seen machine works of such complexity on this scale. Are there other facilities like this? There are many facilities like this. Without nanites, this is how humans learn to do almost everything. For us, this facility isn't even that exceptional. It's just the one that won the bid for the job. And why are you doing this? Your economy requires exchange in kind for all transactions, so what are you getting out of this? Emma looked at me. Diplomacy time. Like our fold drive, our printing industry was invented to solve a problem you don't have because you have nanites. We would have liked to give you our fold technology, but our experience with the Hyacinth showed that you just don't have the underpinnings we were forced to develop to make it possible. Instead, you have nanites, and for you work is a privilege instead of a survival imperative. But the Prometheans started with our ideas and showed that there was another way to make fold drives, still superior in performance but within your grasp to produce. We were happy that others could benefit in a real way from what we had learned after all. But then we visited 19 bits and learned of your problems getting a copy of the instructions. But why should this be a problem? We had solved that too, and again we can use our skill to help the rest of the galaxy. We are not all driven by greed and power lust. You would have to ask the Curators why they deprived us of the gifts that made your critical path so much easier to walk. But whatever their reason was, it turned out that their denial was really their greatest gift to us. And this project is a small gesture on our part to return that gift to you. The journalist returned on the electric bus and Quentin stayed with us. After they were gone, he said, "You know, if you weren't already king of Earth, I'd suggest you might run for president. Just be careful about visiting Dallas, okay?" JFK wasn't bulletproof, Emma said. Emma took Quentin's hand and we folded back to the implausible alibi and took the ship back to Terlingua. The printing operation was well in hand, but we only had a year or so to figure out exactly how to get our gifts to the worlds for which they were intended. 1 year later. In order to make best use of their warehouse space, the Printworks had agreed to fill our order in 3 runs of 350,000 volumes. It would have been a little more efficient for them to print all the copies of each volume at once, but then we wouldn't have been able to start shipping until we had the whole thing complete. As it was, we were loading the human giant nanite fold ship Reliant for its first delivery mission. We were watching a high-speed label printer spray labels at an application robot faster than the eye could follow. Emma set her cell phone to force flash and shot a picture of the label tape. The one she caught read, "Delivery. Ship 462933. 8 at Stop CI. 399428. Pallet 2 of 6, Stack 1. Destination CI. 306094. Ship stop 8 of 40. One pallet held 6 full volumes, each consisting of 2 plastic-wrapped stacks of books. This one would be applied to the second of 6 pallets bound for the 8th ship built by the people of World CI, 462933. That ship's orbit would carry it to 40 worlds, the 8th of which would be CI, 306094, where the stack this label was applied to would be presented to whoever the planetary leadership designated to receive it. The giant fold ship Reliant was, like most large human fold ships, named after a famous spaceship from science fiction. Throughout most of the galaxy, though, it was just 1742660, 204, the 204th registered ship built by the humans of Earth. Reliant could easily carry the entire print run. Since it was only carrying a third, it was also carrying a sizable rotating contingent of scientists and tourists who were taking the opportunity to see parts of the galaxy rarely visited by humans. As we were contemplating the distribution system, our old friend the human curator popped up behind us. "You know you don't have to appear behind our backs anymore," I said as we shook hands. "Old habits are hard to break," he said. "I bring special news. Is there some place quieter where we can enjoy some fine alien liquor?" Although we had not gone to lengths to disguise ourselves, hardly anybody we dealt with day-to-day on the printing and distribution had guessed that we were the Earth's royal couple. We showed the curator to an office whose door said Quality Assurance. "There has been a bit of an argument among our people," he said as he poured a smoky, dark brown liquid into the shot glasses Emma set out. "Not everybody is happy with your promotion, and there is a ritual which we are all expected to witness, for which there will soon be an opportunity. Certain of our people did not want you to show up, but we have finally prevailed." Silently, he made connection to our implants and gave us a set of coordinates about 60,000 light-years away. "What sort of ritual?" "Oh, you'll see. It's quite dramatic and very important to us." "This is sounding a bit weirdly mysterious," Emma said. The curator smiled grandly. You'll understand why I don't want to spoil it for you when you find out what it is. You really should get going, though. You only have a few days to make the event. Fortunately, the whole printing and shipping operation was well in hand, so it wasn't unreasonable for the QA people to slip off for a little vacation. Our destination turned out to be a small asteroid which had been shot through with tunnels and rooms to make a fairly spacious space station a few miles across. We appeared on the bridge and 2 crew members greeted us warmly. The crew were a diverse lot of species, no two quite the same, and their leader was very dinosaurian in profile. So I see our friend found you. Welcome to our greatest work. He didn't tell us what this was about, Emma said. No, you're supposed to see it for yourself. He gestured toward a large window. There was a sun-like star illuminating the scene and 2 worlds, one a little less than twice the diameter of the other, separated by about 10 diameters of the larger of the 2. Both worlds were very young, still glowing with pools of lava from impacts and volcanoes. A double planet? Emma asked. Not yet, the leader said. Emma sucked in her breath. You're making a moon? Very good. Of course, after the trouble your people went to learn your own moon's origin, I guessed that you might figure it out. This is the final engineered collision which will create a stabilizing moon for this new world. Once we observe it and record how it worked out, our work will be done here until the next team shows up in 50 million years or so to introduce life, and meanwhile we will go on to another star system to do it again. How often do you do this? We've been working on this system for about 20,000 Earth years. We scout a lot of systems looking for the gas giants to settle into a good harmony. If they don't, fixing that is a bit beyond even our means. If the gas giants are looking correct, we get to work on the inner system, making sure those worlds are properly harmonized, too. We expect this system to expand by a factor of about 2 before the orbits settle out, so we're a bit closer to the star now than would be comfortable for life. But there's always a bit of randomness in this kind of operation. We won't know exactly what this world will be like until the spectacle is over. At this point, there is nothing we can positively do to guide it anymore, so we will just watch to see how it works out. How do you engineer the inner system? With an amplifier belt, we can fold-translate fairly substantial planetoids, a large fraction of an astronomical unit. We use this to move things into the orbits where we want worlds to form, and with collisions calculated to cancel out inappropriate orbital velocities. And you did this at Sol. We did this everywhere there is complex life in this galaxy. The earliest worlds we made this way are no longer life-bearing because their stars have run their own lifetime and expanded into red giants or gone nova. We have done this at least 20 million times since our ancestors made the technique practical. This station has been our tool of that art for as long as any records can indicate. We don't know exactly how old it is, but it's been at least 6 billion years since these tunnels were carved. The planetoids don't seem to be moving, I said. The deceptive slowness of a mighty event seen from a great distance, Emma said. Yes, they will impact at the larger world's escape velocity, about 10 kilometers per second, and it will take over an hour for the collision to unfold. The event will begin in about 30 hours. He was, of course, using Curator units of speed and time, but our implants translated them seamlessly. Are we in any danger here? I asked. Oh no, it will take over a day for the fastest ejector to reach this point, and by then we will have completed our observation protocol and left the system. So what do we do while we wait? We have quarters in case you want to rest, and our mutual friend left us a bottle of some liquor from your world he promised was quite good. A day later, the 2 globes were nearly touching. Their mutual motion still wasn't obvious, but there was now a countdown being maintained. There weren't a lot of crew members. It turns out you don't need a very large crew to do engineering of solar systems, and several of them were out in smaller flyers preparing to observe the collision from different angles for later analysis. Our host produced the bottle which had been left for us, and it turned out to be Johnny Walker Blue Label. Well, that's a suitable toast for the birth of a world, Emma declared. Excellent. As the countdown moved into the single digits of seconds, our host stood and raised his glass. Emma and I followed suit. We are curators, our host said. Everything we do either leads up to this moment or follows from it. This is the thing for which we exist, the thing we give to our galaxy and our children, the greatest gift we can give to life itself, a new world. As if on cue, obviously he had timed it, the viewport was bathed in blinding white light. The immediate contact point was not directly visible, but a cloud of ejecta was being blasted from the expanding ring of contact between the 2 spheres, and it was both white-hot and illuminated by even brighter light from the collision point. This is indeed a fine liquor, our host declared. Emma and I joined in the toast. You know, after a couple of 100 years, I have never met a curated race that wasn't affected in mostly similar ways by ethyl alcohol. Oh, that's a gift from those who curated us, our host said. When we return to this place to seed it with life, those seeds will contain the same genetic codes which naturally evolved on our original ancestral world. Some of those, introduced later in the process, will spur the development of nervous systems which have similar properties. Our susceptibility to other psychoactive chemicals tends to vary, but nearly all of us can appreciate the effects of alcohol and the art of its creation by relatively primitive methods. Outside, the ring of debris was expanding, but not that quickly. In a couple of minutes, the smaller world's ejection jet will appear. What? At these levels of force, rock is compressible, and the shock wave moves through the world at many times the normal speed of sound. When the shock wave reaches the far point from the impact, a jet will form. If the collision was head-on, it would be a neat linear jet. But since the smaller world is being sheared apart by design, the jet will become a fan. That compressed rock will be freed from the confinement of more material ahead of it and leap into space. Sure enough, all this happened within a few minutes. I've seen too many science fiction movies, Emma said. It's too damn quiet. If you could hear it, our host said, you would be dead. Oh, I know that, Emma said. Seeing it for real is a real privilege. Our host put down his glass. Actually, it is, he said. You can have all of our powers. You can be talented and carry out other aspects of the great work. But until you have seen this, many of us would say you aren't really curators. We do many things other than this, and many of those things are very important. But this is the thing that is done by nobody else, and without which our galactic garden would inevitably be sterile. He poured us another round and we watched the fireworks. In a few hours, a ring of material had gone into orbit while the bulk of the smaller world's mass had merged with the larger one, spinning up its rotation. Now the ring would coalesce into a moon, and if our hosts had done their job right, tidal forces would begin to lift the moon into a higher orbit while slowing the larger world's rotation in trade. But we didn't wait to see that. After a few hours, the engineering station folded out to a safer distance, and we went back home to see how the publishing operation was going. There are a little over 3 million registered capital fold ships in the Milky Way galaxy. Of these, about 1 in 5 run a regular route called an orbit, visiting the same worlds in a sequence that regularly brings them home to start over. Orbits might take a ship to as few as 5 or 6 worlds or as many as 50. The average is around 30. We carefully selected about 40,000 of these carriers to be our final delivery assistants. Breaking down the half-dozen pallets they would be supplied with to deliver one set of volumes to each world they visited, a gift that was easily accommodated by the usual orbital transports. These ships would visit nearly every world in the galaxy, and a mop-up direct mission concluding our project would take care of the stragglers. If we had to supply those 40,000 carriers ourselves, it would take us nearly a millennium. A fraction of the regular carriers maintain scheduled orbits, so that they can reliably share rendezvous with a few other ships as they travel. This allows for heavy cargo to be transferred in space without deorbiting and waiting for the other ship to arrive. This, of course, is exactly the service we needed, and we recruited about 10,000 second-tier helpers which would be supplied with enough books for their own orbital destinations, as well as all those of the other ships they planned to meet. These ships would each take on 20 or 30 pallets. Everything was pre-labeled as to which ship was to pass it on to which other and which final world each volume was addressed to. If we directly supplied these second-tier helpers, the project would still take between 1 and 2 centuries, longer than we wished. So we also recruited about 2,000 first-tier helpers who would rendezvous with the second-tier helpers. They would take on as many as 150 pallets. This would require 10 to 20,000 square meters of cargo floor space. While that might sound like a large imposition, it really isn't for a capital fold ship. Our partners were all enthusiastic and were training staff to execute the transfers and deliveries even as we loaded the Reliant. Supplying all of the first-tier helpers would take about 30 years, but we would also be running 3 ships in tandem so that it would only take 10. The Alexei Leonov was already waiting in orbit to take Reliant's place for loading after we cleared the staging area. These missions would be absolutely unique in both human and galactic history. Together, the 3 ships would travel within 500 light-years of every point in the galaxy where inhabitable worlds might be found. They would be away from Earth for the full 10-year mission, shattering the records for both longest and most distant away mission ever conducted. They would be stuffed not only with books, but with recording devices operated by some of humanity's best scientists. The missions would also each take about 1,000 tourists hungry for the opportunity to literally go where no human had ever gone before. Most of these people would not stay out the whole 10 years, as more modest passenger-class fold ships would regularly commute between the book carriers and the human colonies, allowing passengers to come and go. One goal of these missions, other than book delivery, was to create a human index of the galaxy, which would actually list every star, not just the curated ones, in the parts of the galaxy where it was safe to fly. Accordingly, we would be making short stops in interstellar space between our destinations in order to take quick scans to fill in as many gaps as possible. For the benefit of both the scientists and the tourists, we also had side trips scheduled to a few places that wouldn't harbor life, but were of intense interest for other reasons. Emma and I joined the expedition in our personas as king and queen, and our departure was choreographed so that we could watch the Leonov descending to take our place. Within a day we made orbit at CI 114602 to wait for their ship 11460205, which took on 138 pallets to bring the Promethean drive-making methods to 692 other worlds. Emma and I personally delivered a copy to the surface of CI 114602 itself, where we were greeted with applause and treated to a lavish party. Instead of continuing with Reliant, Emma and I jumped ship to follow the 5, as its crew called it. The pallets had been carefully staged so that the 27 meant for Tier 2, Helper 526900, 8 were on the outside of the storage area. The pallets were equipped with remotely controlled gravity plating skids and transferred from one enormous airlock to another in vacuum. They also transferred quite a bit of other cargo. This was a function we had never actually seen before since we had our own methods. It was shocking to realize we were ignorant of such a basic function of standard galactic commerce. We really did tend to stay in our own little bubble of civilization. Once again, we jumped ship to follow the 8. We were assured that this was a very common form of shorthand affectation for the crews of fold ships, most of whom lived aboard for years at a time, and came to consider the ship more of a home than their home world. The 8 made 4 stops where we broke the pallets labeled for that purpose and delivered volumes to the surface. Then we stayed in orbit at CI 1004,917 for nearly a week, waiting for the 1004,917, 2 to complete its orbit. While we waited, we delivered their instruction volume to the eager staff of an already built fold shop facility. As we watched, about 20 of them took seats at a long table, and the first volume was separated at one end. The pages were passed down the line to be read by each individual, and then at the far end of the table they were reassembled. This reading line was a suggestion that had been compact enough to make it in over the microfold, and we were assured that it was the most efficient way to familiarize the most individuals with the overall content of the manuals in the shortest time. The readers would obviously not retain enough details to be able to start work, but they would have some idea where to go when they needed that detailed knowledge as they built their shop. The readers took notes and discussed each page with their neighbors, and passed the pages along at the sound of a chime, which allowed generous time to read and discuss each page. This time when the 10049172 arrived, we only transferred 4 pallets, one of which was only half full, with a volume for each of the 27 worlds it would visit before returning home. And wanting to see how the process played out to the end, we again jumped ship. This time we were surprised to find that the crew did not call their ship the 2. Instead, they called it Eyes, which we eventually figured out was a slang term for a result of 2 in an ancient and popular gambling game that involved flipping ceremonial coins. Since there were no more bulk transfers, we stayed with the Eyes for its entire orbit, personally delivering each volume. While we were aware of the range of body styles among curated species, it was a new thing to see so many of them on their native worlds in such a short time. Most of them thrived only on a relatively small part of their world for which they were adapted. Some of them had specialized protective gear for exploring more extreme environments, but none of them lived in such environments permanently, or even for long periods the way that humans do. Some, like our hosts, had been making preparations to try making a fold drive before we arrived. Others thanked us and showed us how they would put our gift in secure storage until they could recruit guides who could help them use it most effectively. We came to understand that in these early days, the most valuable product of a fold drive shop wasn't going to be a fold drive. It would be the trained personnel who could go to other worlds and help them spin up an operation quickly without making mistakes or missteps. It would take millennia for the Promethean methods to achieve full penetration. 3 million plus existing capital fold ships were effectively obsolete, and Promethean technology would make possible new classes of smaller and more numerous long-range craft that could land on any world. It would no longer be necessary to transfer cargo in vacuum by remote control, and landing would make direct rendezvous unnecessary for large-scale commerce. Entirely new forms of commerce would become practical. All over the galaxy there was an electric feeling of change in the air, a larger change than the galaxy had seen in eons. And while we had some help from the Prometheans, it was mostly humans who had done this. The Prometheans would not have developed their more accessible drive if we hadn't taught them the secrets of our more difficult-to-build version, and they did not have the means to publish what they had learned for the benefit of the entire galaxy. After we returned to CI 1004917, we went for a quiet walk on the outskirts of their capital city, and when nobody was looking, folded home to Terlingua, state of Texas Earth. As we poured celebratory shots of some alien liquor our curator friend had left for us, Emma sighed. "You know," she said as we clinked our shot glasses, "I keep thinking of that operation to make a moon. I can't help wondering what happens next. I know we are supposed to actually live long enough now to think of projects on that scale, but somehow it doesn't seem real." "I know," I said. "We've done something here that everyone thinks is extraordinary, and then you compare it to that and it's like, really?" "I want to see what happens next," Emma declared. "I want to see the whole process. They might not have finished the job for whatever reason, but for practical purposes the curators still created us. They created our world, our biosphere, our ancestors, and the whole environment that in turn created us. I want to see how and why they did it." "Well, you know who we have to ask about that," I said, and we nodded in agreement. A few moments later, our friend, the human form curator, popped into existence right in front of us. "I remembered not to bother hiding this time," he said with a grin, "and I brought more refreshments. I hope the untranslatable was to your liking." "It's fine," Emma said, and then she stated her business. The curator nodded. "I had a feeling it might have that effect on you, so I've already made some inquiries," he said. "The kind of work you are now interested in isn't as spectacular, and it is ongoing. So fewer of us want to see it, and it is easier to get a guided tour. Let me finish making some arrangements. Not all of us are pleased with what you are now doing, so we have to be a little careful about who to approach.